site. The fourth site that was identified, which actually we're very excited about, is the trading post of Negue up in Orono, just south of Ayers Island, if people know where that is. And that is shown on a 1672 French map, and that's how Emmerich Spooner initially identified it. And so it wasn't until October that I had time to go up and look over an area. Much of the area is disturbed by graveling operations, probably from the earlier in the past century. But more on the north edge of that is a small area that's undisturbed, and then a person's property that is nicely flat and cleared that provides a beautiful view up and down the river is very much intact and would be an ideal location for such a trading post like that. It's also fairly low to the river, so it would have been accessible to historic folks and Native Americans. Attempts to contact the landowner were unsuccessful through phone and writing a letter. So we're going to pursue that first thing in the spring and trying to get a hold, and maybe Representative Timmons, maybe you can be of help with that if for some reason we aren't successful in getting a response. But we're excited about actually I think that site has the greatest potential to actually yield evidence of a site that is not known. Rick Faulkner, Professor Rick Faulkner, who was at Orono, passed away a number of years ago, he was always interested in finding this site because he was very interested in the French occupation up in that neck of the woods, so to speak. And I've spoken about this several times with his wife, Gretchen Faulkner, and she's very interested in this as well. So when we will keep Representative Campbell informed of work with that, and then the report will be presented under separate cover, hopefully if we receive permission to work there.
I can't thank you enough. Representative Tipping-Spitz. Yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's interesting visiting towns like Castine, where they've got, it seems like every historical thing that ever happened labeled on nice little plaques. Mm-hmm. And I literally live less than a mile from the site in Orono. I live on Main Street just south of the police barracks. So
okay, right
down the hill, basically, from where I live. So thank you for doing the work. It would be really cool, and if there's anything I can do to help to pursue it and bring in schools, or not just the university, but also it would be an interesting process to get school kids involved and interested in the history of Maine. So
initially, oftentimes it all depends on the landowner. The first stage of this would just be trying to identify the site, and so we would do a very similar program where we would just do individual shovel test pits. And again, sometimes that has to be very low profile, because if the landowner is sensitive, not only are we digging up his or her lawn, but oftentimes they don't want a lot of people coming in, so we have to gauge it all in that way. But hopefully we'll receive permission and see what we can come up with.
Representative Campbell, your constituent that brought this to you and stuff, they've gotten the report now, and
yes,
yep,
right, yes, and he has the reports, and then he'll deliver one report to Emmerich Spooner, I think,
in the council.
Yeah, super. Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any way that the technology that Sarah Pacek has been using in Egypt could be employed here, or is it too much overstory?
We were just talking about that. She's looking at much larger places of settlement, in other words, whole towns, basically. And so a trading post would consist of one structure or one, two, or three structures. Typically, because it's way off.
Like being up to camp or something.
Right, exactly. It's in the willy-wags. And so you have probably a post with trade goods in it, and then you have a little building to live in. And so it's a fairly small establishment, probably log or wattle and daub buildings. And so to answer your question, we use what's called ground penetrating radar, which is actually an instrument that you drag along the ground in transects, and it sends sound waves down, and it bounces off, and then you can identify things that way. It's very possible that that could be used at a site like this. Really, at this first early stage, the shovel testing to just look for artifacts or changes in the soil is really the best way to go. Unless you have a really good idea, there's some ground features that say, hey, we know this is here, now we want to learn about specific aspects of the site, how big it is, or what are the components, are there stone foundations or trenches or palisades or whatnot. Once we've identified it, then maybe we can look into doing some ground penetrating radar. Again, we would have to search for some funding, to move forward with that.
Anything else from the committee?